against the mainstream media, providing a place for censored people, censored cultures, censored ideas. America Happens is uncensored entertainment with our flagship shows. Blood Money with Them Miller. Where Are the Men? Conspiracy Truths with Mindy Robinson. AHN News Live with Corinne Clifford. Gloves Off with Joey Gilbert. Debate Smackdown. Unfuck Your Mind News. Follow the Money. The America Happens documentary series. Medicine Cabinet. Meet the Frontline Doctors. And many more. On the Blood Money podcast, we expose conspiracy, corruption, and controversy. We tell the stories they won't tell. We speak with the people they don't want you to know. We give the information that's censored everywhere else. You hear from the freedom fighters, the outliers, the frontline doctors, the whistleblowers, the moms and dads, the generals, the artists, the investigative journalists, the legends, the icons, the forward thinkers, the professors, the teachers, the good lawyers, the watchmen, and the watchwomen, the activists, the brilliant minds, the musicians, the pastors, the analysts, the patriots, the risk takers, the warriors, the victims, the writers, the lions. All right, welcome to the latest episode of Blood Money. Today we have a very special episode. We have a multiple number of guests. I'm going to start letting them all in. Mark Cook, Marty Waldman, Matt Meck, Jim Marchant, Steve Tuminello. How is everyone doing tonight?
Good.
Doing well.
Awesome. Great.
Awesome.
Great. Glad to have you guys on the episode. So for the viewers, real quick, what we're doing here is we're going to talk about election 2024 and some of the dangers that await those that are ignorant to what's going on. One of the big controversies we've been experiencing in Nevada here, and Jim Marchant and Marty could actually speak to this topic, is ballot banking. There's been multiple individuals pushing the idea of ballot banking, but we are here to learn about the process of ballot banking, how it might not be the best way to approach 2024, especially if we don't want another stolen election. So I'm going to tee this off with Jim Marchant, Nevada's own Jim Marchant, who's been really spearheading the election integrity battle, definitely within Nevada. And Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about this whole, background of ballot banking, what's going on, and what you think we need to do in order to avoid another potentially stolen election?
Well, ballot banking is kind of a form of ballot harvesting, and it's legal here in Nevada, which is very unfortunate at this point, but it is legal, so we have to do it. The problem is if the RNC and Turning Point and others are relying on ballot banking or ballot harvesting for us to win this race, we're in big trouble, because it's not gonna be enough to stem the cheating. So, but the current problem with the ballot banking is that in Nevada here, the legislature, the Democrats, are geniuses, and they built into their bill when they, I think it was last session or maybe the session before, that if you ballot harvest, you have to turn them in within 3 days. And the problem with that is for us, if we turn our ballots in early, then they're going to know how many ballots they have to manufacture and cheat. My goal is for all of us to encourage all the voters in Nevada to hold on to their ballots until the very last day, and then go turn them in on election day. And don't mail them in. You cannot mail them in because the post office is part of the problem. So you have to actually take them to the registrar's office, or clerk if you're in a rural county, or someplace that they've designated that has a drop-off box by the actual voter registration system. Not a box that the Democrats have somewhere, or even churches, things like that. I mean, what I'm going to do personally, I'm going to take the ballot that I get in the mail, and I'm going to fill it out, and I'm going to drop it off at the registrar's office in Clark County on Cheyenne or Tradeport, wherever the registrar's office there, because that way we can't guarantee chain of custody, but at least we can cut out some of the issues that might be a problem with chain of custody. So that's my view of ballot harvesting, and we've got to do a lot more than that if we're going to win this election.
Jim, let me ask you a couple of quick questions real quick. Like step by step, take me through. Somebody gets a ballot in the mail, right? So let's say today I got a ballot in the mail. What do I do with that? Do I wait until the last 3 days of the election, the last 72 hours, to actually hand that ballot in? Take me step by step through this.
Yeah. Actually, I recommend the last day and the last hour of, even if you can wait long enough to go to the drop-off point. I would wait until the last hour, because we give them any amount of time to calculate how many votes they need. So I'm recommending that everybody go on election day, and you don't have to go early. Just go sometime in the afternoon before they actually close that. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm taking the ballot I get in the mail. I'll fill it out, put it in the envelope, whatever instructions they give you there. And then I'm going to actually drive down to the registrar's office. I'm going to go into the registrar in Clark County, and I'm going to drop it in their drop box. And,
may I make a supplement to that?
Yes.
Please, yes.
Let me ask a quick question here. If you want to vote in person there, you can do so. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so here's what I would recommend doing. It's a little bit more strategic, and it catches them. It blocks them in a little bit further. What I would do is not even open your mail-in ballot up until when you are actually going to go vote it. And then I would walk in, and I would tell them you'd like to vote right there in person. And if when you check in, you are told that you already voted, you have your sealed mail-in ballot in hand to prove that you have not voted, and then you can file a identity theft case or claim.
Great point.
So you catch them there if you do it that way. And if they say you haven't voted yet and here you can vote, then just vote right there and you're good to go. And then they will end up destroying your mail-in ballot. Okay, by doing it that way, you catch them. You catch a bad actor if they were to have already sent in a vote for you.
And what you're suggesting is vote on the machines there, right?
Now, let me ask you this. Are you voting on a digital display machine there, or do you vote on paper when you're in person and then feed it through a tabulator?
It's a machine. It's like an iPad, a large iPad touchscreen. Yeah.
Okay, and I would recommend filling out a paper ballot at that point. So at that point, if you're told you have not voted and you can vote, that's when I would pull your mail-in ballot. I would open it, I would fill it out, and I would hand that paper in. And here's why. Because when you vote on a touchscreen display, there is no way to audit that later. It's a fantasy land inside that box. Exactly. Whereas if you vote on a piece of paper, there is at least a piece of paper that existed at some point that you might have a chance at auditing later.
Right. Well, it's a good point. I'm glad Mark spoke up, because I had it almost right, but I agree with him. Do not open your ballot until you get there, and you make sure that they don't have you marked down as has voted. So that's a very valid point. So I'd like to make sure that when we're talking, and when we're talking on in the media or whatever, to explain it exactly like that, like I just did, and Mark's addendum to it. I like that.
So real quick question here, guys. So could one of you explain what happens if you deliver your vote too early? What are the things that are opening up in terms of potential for fraud if you don't follow the process that you two just described?
Go ahead, Mark. You know exactly.
Yeah, but I'll explain the feedback loop. So what we have to understand here is we've got there's bad guys out there, and they are con artists, and they are very smart, and they have figured out how to design an election system that allows them to be able to manipulate it without people figuring it out. And here's how I have found that they seem to be doing it based on all the evidence I've seen over the past almost 4 years I've been studying this. So let me take you down this path. If I know what your party affiliation is, I have a pretty good idea of what your ballot looks like, especially with how divisive everything is. Most people vote on party lines, so I'd have a pretty good estimation of that. And even if you were an independent, there are still profiles on every citizen to know exactly which way they lean. And keep in mind, some people might say, "Oh, I don't believe that." Well, there are, and the parties have access to them. And remember, if you say the word lawnmower, the next day Facebook is showing you ads of lawnmowers. So this whole world, this micro marketing, everything, this micro targeted everything that's going on is all based on feedback loops that are created. There's little spy machines that are in our hands. We use them every day to make phone calls and search on the internet, right? They are spying on us all the time, watching everything we do. Then they're taking that information, they're utilizing that to benefit other services and other companies. They're selling that information. And that's why that in itself, just the spying, is a big business. So they're using the same tactics in our election system, obviously. And what they're doing is in the mail-in ballot tracking system that you've probably heard of, that you can use to track your ballot so you know where it is. Well, all you're doing is you're going to an app or a website, and you're just blindly believing that the website knows where your ballot is. Now, it may or it may not, but the fact of the matter is it's not designed for the citizens, even though they claim it is. That's part of the con, right? The con is they have substantiated the need to develop a mail-in ballot tracking system under the guise of transparency for the citizen, which they can't really prove. But what they're really doing is they've created a way, an excuse to track all the mail-in ballots. That's not for you. That's for them. And they don't really care where the ballot is. They just need to know, did that person vote? And if that person voted, they just add that person's votes to their little election estimation based on the profile of how that person leans and would vote. And now some people might say, well, I go in person to vote, so they won't be able to track that. Well, you check in on an electronic poll book, so they've got the in-persons covered too. And when you check in on an electronic poll book, that data is also tracked, so they know you walked in to vote. So if they know who votes and when they voted and where they voted, and they can build a model of the election results, and they already know what they want the results to be, it's a simple subtraction for them to know what votes they need to inject into the system to count to the real votes. And then, of course, they've got all of early voting to do that. And then for the people that show up on election day, which they really don't like because they don't have weeks beforehand to plan for it, what we've also given them, stupidly, is another week for the mail-in ballots to show up after the polls close. And that's where they clean everything up at the end. So they've created a tight feedback loop to monitor everything outside of the counties. The counties don't even know this is going on, and they can't see it. This all can happen outside the counties without the county knowledge. They can massage all of this data, phantom injected virtual voter registrations, and then throw in the phantom injected virtual votes to counter the real votes. And then, surprise, they get to control the outcome of the election. So this method of voting in person on election day only takes some of those chess pieces off the board. It deprives them, it starves them of that information, and makes them work harder for it.
Wow, wow. So let me ask you a question, Mark. Now, I've heard that up to 72 hours before the actual day of voting, it's kind of a safe period. Is that incorrect, or?
Well, here's the concept is time and space. So manipulation in an election occurs with time and space. So the more time you have between events in an election, that's more room for manipulation to occur. The more space you have, the more room there is for manipulation to occur. For instance, if you vote early, you give them 2 weeks to manipulate things. So that's bad. If you have a bunch of ballots and you move them from one room to another or from one building to another, i.e. putting space between them, that's bad, because what happens in between while they're being moved from one location to another? So the concept is this: remove and reduce as much time and space as possible between every event within an election, and you will reduce the potential for fraud. So
Okay.
the 3 day before, here's how that plays in. Some people just are unable to vote on election day for whatever reason. Now, we used to do it for hundreds of years somehow, but regardless, people have some arguments on that. So here's my compromise on that. If you can't vote on election day only, vote as close to election day as possible. Deprive them of as much time between those two events as you can.
Copy that. Copy that.
Exactly.
Okay. If one of you guys could give us examples of what was happening, like in I believe it was the Kerry Lake election, that informed us on how to move forward with 2024. Could one of you guys talk about that?
Well, that's a perfect example of us having a plan to vote on election day, and that's what we encouraged down in Arizona. And they, they knew we were doing it, so they sabotaged the ballots in, a couple of red counties, Maricopa specifically, and they made a different, I think Mark can speak to exactly what happened, but they had different size ballots that purposely sabotaged it that way so they wouldn't work in the tabulating machines, I believe. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, I actually happened to go to Maricopa during all this to try to figure out what they were going to do as well, because I knew by voting on election day and depriving them of that information that they normally have had and have been able to very subtly manipulate things, now they don't have it in that election. So I knew they were going to have to do something else to try to cheat. And so what they did is they found a way to reroute a whole bunch of mostly Republican ballots to a different route so they could pre-count them, inject ballots into the system, and then they sent them through the normal route to tabulate everything. And so a lot of people, I would say people that haven't reached yet a heightened level of awareness about the con and what's really going on, will jump to the conclusion that, oh, well, when people voted on election day, the machines didn't work. So therefore, we shouldn't vote on election day because we can't trust the machines to work there. And then another excuse is, well, the weather. What if there's a storm? Well, those are events. Those are methods that these psychopaths are using unsuspecting citizens to do what they want them to do, which is to force them to vote early. And instead of actually forcing them to, you try to convince them that they need to do it, so it's their idea, and then it's really hard to get them to open their eyes and realize they have been lied to and they're actually wrong. So that's what happened in Maricopa. And what they did is pretty simple. It's brilliant. These people are not stupid. Well, they're stupid in some ways, but they're brilliant in some ways as well. Normally, the ballots are 20 inches. It's a 20-inch piece of paper, and the image that's printed on the paper is also 20 inches. And what they did is they found that if they shrunk the image to 19 inches instead of 20 and printed it out on that same 20-inch piece of paper, that it was such a subtle adjustment that the human eye didn't really pick it up. So the citizens didn't see anything wrong. The election officials didn't see anything wrong. But if you shrink something by an inch over 20 inches, the computer, the scanner, is going to have a massive problem interpreting that ballot because the stuff that's on the ballot isn't where it expects it to be on the page. And as a result, the system started rejecting all those ballots. And when they couldn't be scanned, there's a procedure to put them in what's called box 3. And that's to have a different process to look through them, a human to look through them. Well, they did it to so many of them that box 3 filled up, and they ended up having to put a whole bunch of ballots in trash bags because they had so many. I mean, there were, I think, 60 something thousand. There were a crazy amount of them. In fact, they all ended up going to Runback, and for some reason, instead of the county taking care of them, Runback Voting Systems goes and takes care of them. And when they arrived at Runback, they never counted them. Can you imagine that? They didn't count the ballots that arrived. I mean, how stupid, if you're trying to keep track of chain of custody of these ballots, how stupid do you have to be to not count them? Well, it's not stupid. It's intentional. And all they did is they weighed them. Yeah, they weighed them. And then they calculated based on the weight of them and how much each ballot would weigh. They got an estimation of how many were there. And then that number they actually provided in Kari Lake's trial. Well, then they did count the number of ballots that left Runback. And wouldn't you know, the number of ballots that left Runback were about 30,000 more than went into Runback. Runback claimed that they allow their employees to bring ballots in and inject them into the processing. And that's apparently normal, even though it's not a certified facility to drop off a ballot. Apparently, rules for thee, but not for me, right?
That's right.
So, and I guarantee Runback doesn't have 30,000 employees. So there's some funny business going on there. I believe that's exactly what they did, is they counted them themselves. They probably adjusted the ballot definition in some of their tabulators that they already had because they'd created this the night before anyway, to read all those ballots. They figured out how many they need to inject to counter them. They added those in, and then suddenly and magically they were able to add those to all the totals. It's kind of a kludgy way to do it, but it's kind of smart, I guess, for a bunch of stupid psychopaths. But so that's what that deal was. And that's why a lot of people are freaking out saying, I can't vote on election day. Now, the other thing they did wasn't just the shrinking of the image. They also changed some of the printers. They turned on eco mode. Eco mode saves toner. It uses less toner when it prints, so the image is not as dark. And when they did that, because the image wasn't dark enough, the scanner also could not interpret it because a black was actually gray instead of black. So what the election officials noticed that was really obvious to them. So they were actually taking Sharpies and pens, and they were filling in all the gray boxes to make them really dark black and then trying to feed them through. I mean, it was taking them 45 minutes to do this on a ballot. To get these things through it was a total disaster. So the name of the game was, we're going to take control of the election no matter what. You deprive us of the data, and we're going to do all this. The beauty of it is we caught them doing it. They had to cheat out in the open, and that's what the huge win was. Because they're going to cheat anyway. If they're going to cheat anyway, would you want them to cheat in secret and not catch them? Or do you want to force them to cheat out in the open and catch them red-handed?
Mark, something that you had said before, I thought, which was very apropos, and I've shared it a lot, is doing this where you're voting as close to possible to election day or on election day in person, is that how they cheat in the shadows. This, then, what you're recommending causes them to have to come into the light, and it further exposes them.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious.
Absolutely.
Like, where is the cheating? Where do they have to cheat the most heavily in order to win 2024?
The counties like Clark County, Washoe in Nevada. Then you've got counties in Wisconsin like Dane, Philadelphia counties. I mean, if we could minimize the cheating in about 20 to 25 counties around the country, we would solve this problem. I'd like more, but if we could do at least 20 to 25. What do you think, Mark? What's your guess?
I don't know the numbers on that. My concept is I want to try to reduce the amount of cheating as much as possible, take as many chess pieces off the table as we can, make them work really hard for it, and then just overwhelm it with a lot of real votes in the system. That's, I think, they're going to be the easiest way to overwhelm it, because we know they can barely cheat enough to make it win anyway. I mean, that's why they're importing a bunch of new citizens. So if they've got to do, if they're already that desperate, we need to be voting in force and closing as many abuse vectors as we can within the system. And I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off this time. I really don't. And they're going to get caught because everyone's watching. So we're catching them all. I mean, there's so many people watching. There's so many more eyes than anyone knows about on all this. I can't wait. And there's a tiny window. If people want to become whistleblowers on this, I would suggest doing it right away, because if you don't, you are going so down, you couldn't even imagine it.
Yep.
I'm going to enjoy every second of it.
The other advantage that we're trying to do here also is, more eyes on the process, and, encouraging these sheriffs to get involved. We haven't been able to put together, a really organized effort like I wanted so far, but we are talking to some sheriffs. Some sheriffs are hearing what we're saying. And if they will get engaged and guard the vote, so to speak, at these counting centers, at these registrars and clerks' offices, things like that, that's only going to help us and help what Mark said. It's harder. It's a third-degree felony if you get caught cheating. And, I'm sure that if a sheriff's, in there and has somebody that knows a little bit about what's going on, like, help from people like Mark and people he's trained and people that, that know what to look for, it's going to be a deterrent too. So it's going to make it harder for them to cheat. So that's the word we've got to get out to, all of America. Get your sheriffs involved, call them and tell them, say, do your job. You have the ultimate supreme authority in our county. You can guard the vote, and we're telling you that you better do it, or if you don't, we're not going to vote for you again. That's what everybody in America has to do with their sheriff.
The sheriffs the sheriffs are a key component to this, right? Putting a lot of pressure on the sheriffs to basically do their constitutional duty.
Right. It is a component. We're trying to make it very key, because they do have the authority to, so-called, posse-ize or deputize, I don't know what you call it, people to come in and help them. And, I've offered, without, they don't have to pay for it. We've got people that'll come in and be the eyes and ears for them if they're just the enforcer. That's what we need.
Copy. No.
Yeah, and I'd say, well, let our election officials know the same thing. And I think most of the election officials don't realize this is happening. And so if we can open their eyes and help them understand how to better protect their own elections, I think we need to. Now, clearly, there are some election officials out there that know how to manipulate elections in a number of different ways and are doing it. I've caught that in counties across the country, but I think it's very isolated. So we just got to open people's eyes so they know what the true dangers are, and give them some knowledge so they can employ some mitigation strategies to protect their own citizens. Because I think most election officials are great patriotic Americans, and they're doing their best to do a good job, but they're not equipped with the information to be able to combat these types of threats against their systems.
Mark, something that we have posited as a question, Vem, I call it like 20 questions, 10,000 answers, is what would America and the American government look like if the people we actually voted for were actually in office? They keep saying, we're the ones to blame because we're voting these people in. Are we, right? And number two, what would the American election system look like if the election officials actually ran their elections and it wasn't outsourced to a third party?
Got you. I got a question here because there's been a lot of conflicting information coming out, right? Especially, Charlie Kirk's been really pushing the ballot banking idea. Do you guys want to address that question in terms of, the confusion that's out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can address it a little bit. So Charlie Kirk is hell-bent on just doing ballot banking and not even listening to us or addressing our concern about turning them in early. So I'm very upset with him, not talking to us. And, it causes me to think that maybe he's not one of us. So I'm very concerned about what he's doing because he has so much power. He has sucked up so much money out of the conservative political space and then to squander it like he's doing is very upsetting to me. And I think somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's only concentrating on 3 states. And but I was at an event at Mar-a-Lago, his event, his fundraiser. I got invited there by one of my donors, and he raised $21 million that night. And it just made me sick sitting there and watching all of these donors just stand up and I'll give you 500,000. I'll give you $1 million. I'll give you this. I'm going to pledge this. And it just made me sick while good candidates like me and others just begging for money to win a race where we will really make a difference.
Jim, something that we saw in VEM, and I know Mark can have some great additions to this, is what I saw in some conversations with people, if they're looking at it from a traditional political science perspective, right? That makes sense. Okay, get out there and encourage people to vote, harvest where you can. If you think everything is pristine, right? And I think some folks, Charlie might be one of them, doesn't think that the machines necessarily were a factor in the 2020 election. So you have this demarcation line of folks who are looking at it from a political science perspective, which you can see an argument could be made, and everything else being equal. But then if you look at the folks who understand these systems, you understand this feedback loop, cybernetics, that the globalists, the elitists use very well. George Soros, that's where they've created cybernetic feedback loops and a whole host of things. And one thing I'd ask them for folks to consider is I plead Charlie and the RNC, Lara Trump, bring people on, even if you don't go this direction, bring people on like a Mark Cook, like a Pat Kovac, a Ben Cotton, a Colonel, what's his name? Sean, the Air Force Colonel.
Sean Smith.
Yeah.
Professor Clements.
Waldron.
Others, and have this great dialogue of robust debate to see what's the best answer. Why is that not happening?
Yeah, my message to Charlie would be, Charlie, if you don't fully understand the danger of the feedback loop, you really do need to talk to someone that can explain that to you, because if you truly are trying to do the right thing, the last thing you want to get caught doing is hurting the very people you're trying to help, or being caught with your pants down, and you don't want that either. So at least listen to this. Now, as far as the ballot banking, I do not support ballot banking for the reasons I've described. Now, the ballot harvesting, if it's legally done, I don't think there's a huge problem with that. I'm not a big fan of it ethically, but if it's legal and other people are doing it, then helping encourage people to vote, I think, is a good thing. We just don't want to slip into the ballot banking part of the harvesting and give the bad guys an advantage to be able to manipulate an election. So, Charlie, please call me.
Yes. The problem with ballot harvesting is the Democrats have been doing it forever. They're really, really good at it. We, on the other hand, have not been doing it forever. I mean, we were under a consent decree until when, 2018 or something like that? We couldn't do stuff like that.
A lot of people don't know that. Can you go into that dissent decree just so people understand? Because it's a very, very little known thing.
40 freaking years ago, and I can't believe, and once again, this demonstrates that we have a uniparty. And they're controlled by the World Economic Forum, elitist oligarchs And so 40 years ago, the Republican Party agreed not to take place in, not to become active in, election activities like get out the vote, stuff like that. And finally, it expired in 2018. So we don't know how to do all this stuff. And so that's what happened. So now two things. We are not going to be as good at ballot harvesting as they are because, one thing, the unions, especially in Nevada, the unions are heavily involved. They actually get paid to do it. The unions pay them to go do it. And then Soros, of course, pays people to go out and do it. Now, we don't have that ability. We're relying on volunteers, and God bless the volunteers. But everybody knows you cannot, you can't work a volunteer like you can work somebody that you're paying. And we're not going to have the same effect that they're having. So we'll never out ballot harvest them. So if the RNC and others are counting on us ballot harvesting and keeping up with them, at least, status quo, forget it. It's not going to happen. So what we've got to do is get in one time, fix the system back to what, Mark and our coalition put together back in May 1, 2021, get rid of the mail-in ballots, single day voting, get rid of Eric and re-register everybody, and paper ballots with anti-counterfeit measures, and vote on a precinct level basis and count the vote on a precinct level basis, live stream the vote. I mean, have just tons of cameras in there so nobody can actually question how the vote counting is happening, the whole voting process. So that's what we've got to get to. But if people think we're going to out ballot harvest them or even keep up, forget it.
Jim, what you're talking about is a term called covalence, right? Watchers watching the watchers.
Right.
You want to have eyes everywhere to ensure fairness for everybody, transparency for everybody. And I remember talking, I don't know, a year ago or so with several folks about this from a military perspective, and being in the formerly in the military for 21 years. It is, why would you want to play in the enemy's domain where they are expert at, right? We're being drawn in like an ambush. Why would you want to go on the field that they know the best? It makes no sense to me.
Yep, exactly. Well, once again, we're behind the eight ball. We don't have a World Economic Forum, George Soros, Rothschilds funding us. If we did, if we had some of the conservative people step up and help us, we could make a dent in this. And like I said, if we could get them to step up and help us just a little bit, and we can get in and get enough of us elected, then we can begin to take it over. We'll change the laws. We'll change the laws that where they say it's legal to ballot harvest or, whatever, mail-in ballots, get rid of them. Go back to the traditional requested absentee ballot for people that are overseas or just can't be there on the day of the election. So anyway, that's what we've got to get.
Jim and Vem, and for your audience, Vem, I'm going to read a couple of about 5 different bullet points and guess the year that this was presented, right? In absence of data, advocacy groups will use fraud to explain irregularities. New electronic systems will exhibit new behavior that is not understood. Irregularities will continue to be leveraged for political advantage. Election officials will continue to close ranks as a result of increasing external skepticism. Public's confidence in elections decrease. Political leaders' ability to lead is diminished. What year do you think that was said, Ben, or presented?
I'm going to take a wild guess because I know this is a trick question. So I'm going to guess it was like 1960s.
A little too far back, but 2005.
Oh, sorry. All right. I thought it was a real trick question, so yeah. I was really aiming
just
for
a little bit of a trick.
2005, and it's interesting. The group that we're all a part of, and Jim was that great political leader that we started with here in May of 2021. Yeah. And it was we had sent letters out to the donor class in April of 2022, and we said literally, seriously, nothing really has been done effectively, and 2022 November will be worse than 2020, down ballot and geographically. And a lot of them thought we were full of mierda del toro
Yeah.
until after November 2022, and they go, "How did you know?" It's because we did. It's like we put a Band-Aid on a cancer patient. We didn't do anything of substance that we could have. And now, as Mark says, as he's transitioning, when he's presenting, we're in a triage. We're in a patient that needs triage right now. We can't do the long-term thing right now because the flash to bang is now in November. So I think Mark articulated a little more. There's triage things that we need to do now. It's suboptimal, but it's the best we can do.
I just want to say that there's a whole spectrum here. Like, we can wish that the machines are ruled unconstitutional and they go away, right? That would be like the ultimate thing that can happen. But that's totally out of our hands as citizens. This is the only thing that we can do as citizens to make a difference. By us voting as close to election day as possible. When I say that, I mean you can vote early, but your ballot should not be picked up until election day. And here in Nevada, now it's different in all the states, but here in Nevada, it's 3 days before. So for instance, if you have your favorite Dropbox location in a church or whatever, if you bring your ballot there at the most 3 days before election day, they will hold your ballot in that box under camera and security for those 3 days until it's picked up. So even though you voted early, you're voting on election day, and you have all the conveniences of not waiting in line, so forth and so on. So that's like the big compromise here. It's like, maybe there's a state where it's 5 days before, or maybe a week before. I don't know, but
just keep it as close to election day as possible.
Right.
This is death by 1,000 cuts. They're subverting elections with death by 1,000 cuts. So what we need to do is we need to start applying Band-Aids everywhere we can. And this is a big Band-Aid. That's what that is.
I mean, it sounds like there's an institutional issue here, because we're out here on an independent level trying to inform people the right way to do this. But the RNC's not telling us this. Over here in Nevada, our Republican committee is not telling this. So a part of this is all the viewers that are watching this have to call 5-10 people that they know, really make sure to spread the word about this, because on an institutional level, it's not happening. What do you guys think about that?
That's absolutely right, and it's a travesty. I mean, we had no choice with Ronna McDaniel in there and her whole cabal and rhinos. I mean, they're not even rhinos. They're Democrat, they're uniparty people. Now that they're gone, we've got we've got Michael Watley in there, who I think is capable. We just need to get his ear somehow. And then Laura Trump, God bless her. I like her a lot, but she's green. She doesn't, she's just taking orders from people, the snakes around Trump. And
she needs to call me.
Yeah,
she needs to call me.
She does.
Charlie and Laura need to call me.
Yeah, because they're listening to the snakes that are around President Trump right now that don't believe there was election fraud, and there are snakes around him very close that do not believe that.
And if they want to listen to me and they want to say, you know what, I don't agree with you, that's fine. But at least listen. Right. So when you do get caught with your pants down, you can remember, oh, he did try to tell us this.
That's right.
He did try to warn us.
And Vem, it's interesting. This goes back to the Arizona audit, right? I know Mark Cook, myself, another gentleman was down there with Shelby Bush and her team, and did 1000cuts.org. Take a look at that website, and great reveal of those patriots of all walks of life who were trying to audit the ballots or audit that election. But what we find is that when folks who had some knowledge in this field wanted to go down on their own cost, and Mark Cook and others, we haven't asked for a dime, maybe except to
expenses a little bit
to cover a cost to get there, but no honorarium, no fees for service, anything like that. But what you find is when we went down and offered help to that establishment class in Arizona, and I'll leave it at that. It was they needed more money. I mean, it's right after the summertime when an audit was beginning to wrap up, and they were running out of money, and poor Patrick Byrne was being asked for more. He was like a human ATM.
Yep.
And
God bless him, by the way.
Somebody was going to get some money. And it was, I think Mark knows, it was this donor in South Carolina was going to help with the stuff they were doing in November, December in DC in 2020. And this donor asked 3 questions of the folks who were spending the money there in Arizona. How much have you spent so far? How much more do you know? And what's the cost breakdown structure of where it's going? And we got iced out, completely iced out.
Wow. Crazy, man. Let me ask you something. You brought up 2005, I believe, was the date you're saying with that quote you read earlier. Diebold machines. Let's talk about Diebold machines, the 2004 election. I mean, was this happening back then? There was a lot of accusations back then about George W. Bush and the 2004 election with the Diebold machines. Do you know anything about that topic?
I do somewhat. I mean, and I'll let Mark add to it. The person in the group, it was Election Science Institute. They were asked by the Board of Supervisors in Cuyahoga County to come in and take a look at that. Right, it was a primary, and then they also looked at the machines. And then the Democrats wanted to look at the 2004, and at least what they found then, this was Diebold, they didn't find. And they had world-class statisticians, queuing theory people. I mean, they had SMEs, subject matter experts, looking at this. They didn't find a bias then to one candidate or the other. And ironically, the money dried up from in that case, at that point, the Democrats, because they wanted a candidate bias. They wanted a result, a predetermined result, and there was no bias that they could find from a candidate. It might still be there, but they couldn't find it with their analysis. But what they did find, and I'm going to oversimplify it, I believe, and Mark can correct me, using the machines themselves resulted in a 10% error rate. And the question that came out after that is, how many elections, just since we've been alive, or since 2004, has the margin of victory been less than the margin of error of what they showed in that audit was the margin of the machines error, which was 10%, the margin of victory. If it's less than that, how can you, honest to God, certify an election? Because you just don't know.
Almost every election is less than 10%.
A lot of them are less than 1%. And when you have the machines involved, because they're so complex and people don't understand them, it allows very smart bad actors to commit manipulations that they can disguise as error. So when they say that there's 10% error or any percent error, that could be an intentional manipulation. But if they don't know how to describe it as a manipulation, they just default to calling it an error.
And that's
a beautiful way to do it.
Here's the other thing a lot of people don't know. Temp agencies, people from temp agencies are hired to set up these machines. They don't know anything. They come in for a couple of hours training and set up these machines. And a lot of times they don't do it right. And it's just pure incompetence on the people that are setting these machines up. And
it's on purpose, though.
It is on purpose.
They want to induce error into the system to cause chaos, raise the noise level in the system, which makes it easier to hide the real manipulation. And they also don't want anyone working on the systems that truly know them. So they compartmentalize the people, and they only know a very little bit. This person knows how to plug a printer in. This person knows how to program a ballot. But no one really understands the whole system in entirety except for the people that work there.
And here's
by the way, you mentioned something. Yeah. The whole compartmentalization topic is very interesting because that seems to be something that across our entire government that's taking place. And that's a way to disempower individuals that are concerned about our rights by basically compartmentalizing everyone's duties. So they're all in a little box. Nobody's thinking big picture. I mean, what do you think about that topic?
Of course. I mean, that's the easiest way to manipulate a system is if people can't see it. Compartmentalize it, manipulate it all you want. No one can see the cloud or the forest through the trees until they get up into the clouds and actually look at everything, and then it's easier to see.
Here's the other thing that I had a whistleblower contact me out here in Nevada, guys from Reno. He was one of these temp agencies or temp guys that they hired. And when he's a good guy, he's wants a fair and transparent election. And when he questioned things, like, well, wait a minute, something's not right here. They let him go. They wouldn't keep him, even though he was the most competent person there and could, had capabilities with technology. They let him go. So why is that? Because what Mark said, they're building in incompetency into the system. They want it to be bad.
Wow. I have this.
I'll tell you what. Here. So, sorry. Yeah, let's put that video on for the banking your vote. This is a brilliant video done by JP Sears.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone could have done it better. In fact, let me make this statement. No one could have done it better than JP did.
That's
so
right.
I would love people to be able to see this video because it hits everything right on the head.
He's freaking awesome.
This is Marty. This is part of your handiwork, right? You had something to do with this.
Yeah, I got to work with them to do it.
Nice. All right, so we're going to play this video, and it seems like it's a couple of minutes, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes here.
Do you think America will exist a year from now? I don't know, but it's looking like it's coming down. And whoever they surprisingly replace Biden with. Yeah. But with so much riding on it, do you think this election will have integrity? Wait, are you suggesting that all elections aren't 100% full of integrity? No, I'm not really suggesting that. Are you an election denier? Are you an election? Question's hard for me to process, but saying an election was stolen or could be stolen should be a high crime punishable by imprisonment. A lot of people have claimed such things, such as this one.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows.
You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee. And you can have the election stolen from you.
Yes. It's almost as though we're made to forget that such a credible person has said such things. Yeah, I'm just saying with the upcoming election being so monumental, our votes are going to be really important. I agree, so we should definitely vote early by mail-in ballots to help secure our election. What? Yeah, it's called ballot banking. A lot of Republicans are promoting it. How does voting early by mail protect your vote? Because it puts your vote in the hands of another person for a long period of time where you get to have faith that they won't accidentally lose it, throw it away, or allow another single person to access it. And then on election day, they put it where it goes, where it will then be observed in a public way, starting at that point. Did you know that if you vote in person on election day, then you just start at that point? You don't want to do that. Because remember with Kari Lake's election, a lot of the voting machines accidentally shut down, coincidentally in Republican areas, leading to long, frustrating voting lines. And they accidentally had the wrong size machines that couldn't read the 20-inch paper ballots. Therefore, a lot of the votes didn't even get counted. So this disenfranchised a lot of voters. Person voting on election day is no good, and therefore we as Republicans need to vote early by mail. It's called ballot banking, bro. Did you ever think that? Never have. At least not my own thoughts. Did you ever think that highly accidental debacle with Kari Lake's election might have been a ploy to get Republicans to abandon the most secure way of voting, while getting them to willingly participate in a very unsecure way of voting while thinking it's the most secure way of voting? You clearly don't understand. It's called ballot banking. That sounds secure. Like, without even thinking about it, my mind automatically associates like Fort Knox with the word banking. And that word association makes me feel as though it's very secure without even having to think about it. Who exactly is trying to dissuade you from in-person voting to make our elections more secure? No, the RNC is doing what the DNC used to do. You know how the RNC is part of the Uniparty? Yep. And how over the years the RNC has spent plenty of time being at odds with President Trump, even though he's the people's choice. Yeah. And how you don't trust the RNC because they're an integral part of the establishment. But you trust this initiative of theirs that seems to be built on a foundation of quicksand, where they're trying to get you to do what the Democrats were trying to get you to do in the last election? Yes, because their Don't Vote on Election Day by Banking Your Ballots Ahead of Time initiative is phrased in a very convincing way, positioning the deceptive Democrats as our common enemy. Therefore, I think the RNC's on my side because I'm forgetting about the Uniparty right now. Unless it's a PSYOP. But I'm pretty sure the things I fall for aren't PSYOPs. Only stupid people fall for those. Agreed. And when I fall for them, I deny that they're PSYOPs and laugh at the term like it's a crazy made-up thing that never happens. Awesome. Plus, I sense that another disease will be coming where part of the cure is mail-in ballots, just like the last election. That one didn't work out so well. Yeah, that one didn't work out so well, but I expect the same thing done over again will garner a different result. Thus, as a good, obedient Republican, I will be participating in ballot banking by casting my vote early by mail. Well, voting in person on election day. Long lines, gonna be a hassle, gonna be worth it.
All right.
Pretty great, huh?
Yeah, that's a great piece. That's a great piece. Explains it very well.
So
It is. People need to get that. That needs to be 1 million plus views.
Yeah.
People seriously need to get that out everywhere.
Yeah. Put a link.
I'm gonna put the link down here. I'm gonna paste it for the viewers as a link down here. And please share this, guys.
Share
Please share this, and share this episode. We have to be very aggressive right now. We're like, this is like as grassroots as it gets. Okay, we're out here on this little podcast that we do, and we trust that this word will spread throughout the community, because frankly, the establishment isn't going to do it. You heard what JP Spears says. They're not going to do anything. They're part of the Uniparty. And by the way, for anybody that has any confusion about what the Uniparty is, look at Jim Marchand's race. That's a perfect example of somebody. And I'm not going to talk a lot of crap about the person, but somebody that has glaring issues, and that really doesn't stand much chance against a Democrat. I could be wrong, but we'll see in November. And Jim Marchand, he was talking about, having a hard time raising money when he's a candidate that's been around for a while fighting this nonsense. So there is a uniparty out there. You don't expect to hear from the RNC. You're going to hear from the grassroots movement, which is on this podcast right now.
Awesome. Yeah, it is we the people that have to do this. We have to drive this. And we can. If every single person listening to this gets 10 people to watch this video, and they each get 10 people to watch the video, we can make a dramatic difference in our country.
Yep.
I just want to point out with the every state is pretty much different with their laws. For instance, in Georgia, they don't have the mail-out ballot situation at all. And they have a pretty friendly, it still took a lot of work, but legislature over there. Garland Favorito did a lot of work with them, with his wife and a number of other people. And they got some good laws passed, something we probably can't get done here in Nevada. But over there, they have more accountability. So about, like I mentioned before, about all we can do is in Nevada 3 days before, if you don't want to wait to vote on a machine, and we all know the machine stories, but anyway, narrowing that time in advance. There's nothing wrong with machines. It's the people that program them is that the issue. So, and we're unfortunately up against that whole situation. So all we can do as people is to hold off giving them that advanced information until election day. So now, of course, there's, I forget how many days after the election they can count here in Nevada. And certainly they can do a lot of things because they'll have all the votes in. They'll know how many people voted for who. And if they have a week to doctor it up, they can. However, this is where the whole people's voice comes in to just constantly hammer it in the press. It's like, well, why is it taking an extra day? Why is it taking an extra 2 days? Why is it taking an extra 3 days? So forth and so on. We have to keep on them so it's brought to the public's attention that something is not right, especially, when they say things like, no, we can't use hand count paper ballots. It's too expensive and it takes too long. If we did hand count paper ballots, we wouldn't be counting them for even an hour after the polls close, that night. So
it might take 3 or 4 hours in a precinct of about 1,500. You also have to look at the ballot complexity. The ballots have increasingly become more centralized and more complex in order to also channelize this into using computers. So we need to be smart about that. We need to have more frequent, smaller elections. In addition to when we have complex ballots and there's 200 plus choices on a ballot, the voter gets exhausted. And how does any voter know how to judge all those different measures and all those different people and remember all of them to go to the ballot box? It's ridiculous. It actually disenfranchises people. So we can make some changes, some adjustments to have more frequent, smaller elections, which will actually help real voter participation as well, in addition to making it easy to be able to count at a precinct level.
Mark, something that you said, and I think this is critical, is let's use technology to increase the transparency of our election system, not to increase the opaqueness of our election system.
Yeah.
And the
Absolutely.
second thing is that Joe Allen, at the event at the Ahern with Bannon's Force Multiplier Academy, he wrote the book Dark Aeon. He usually is the doom and gloom guy on Bannon's show about AI and where AI can take us if we're not careful. And he said, instead, I want to be very positive. And I think it struck me, and I was sitting next to Marty, and Mark was right next to me, and Pastor Andy was there. He said, think of it this way, whether it's in voting, your health care, your health support system, or the military, right? We're on the verge of having AI, computer-based technology, making that decision whether to terminate a human life or not on the battlefield, not a human, right? So he said, here's a default thing that I think we should think about. Whenever you have a choice in those kind of domains between a machine or a human, default to the human because the human's closer to God.
Wow. Interesting. Let me ask you guys about these, something that we get asked all the time is these, quote unquote, 30 million immigrants that a lot of people think are going to be voting, or illegal immigrants, I should say. Could you tell us a little bit about that topic, any one of you?
I'll tell you, I don't think they're going to be voting. I think they are going to be used as an excuse to inject voter registrations. I think people are going to be voting for them.
So they're basically going to be allocated ballots, and then somebody is going to use those ballots to fill it out, and obviously for the Democrat.
Of course. I just don't think that all these illegals are going to be doing it, but we have a system that we have now allowed virtual voter registrations and virtual voting to occur in. So you never really know who actually registers, who's the person that's actually doing the registration, putting the registration in. We don't know that. We also don't know the person that's actually filling the ballot out on a mail-in ballot. So because of that, it makes the entire system totally open to someone else voting for people or registering someone else. So I think the 30 million illegals is an excuse to inject these registration records into the system, then inject ballots in, and then say, well, it's the illegals. And if you look around, look at all these laws in all these states now that are allowing people to vote in the election if they can't prove their residency. In some states like Arizona is allowing, last I checked on the AG site, if you cannot prove your residency, you get a federal only ballot. So you get to vote in the federal election if you are unable to prove your residency. That is insane.
Wow.
And it's not the only state.
You know, Marty, you had brought up an interesting topic. You're saying that even if we overwhelm the system and get Trump into office, the risk that we run is through a lot of these scams, all the down ballot votes are going to be due to fraud, meaning our Senate and Congress is going to be, and other seats are going to be filled with people that didn't really win that office. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. Well, we've all heard that phrase, too big to rig, right? And maybe that'll be true for the presidency. We'll see. But I guarantee you, probably 99% of the House and Senate candidates, their races are not too big to rig. Even if they're very popular locally, it's not of the proportion that the too big to rig slogan was describes. So
basically, you're talking about, like, even if Trump wins, he's not going to have a Senate or Congress that is necessarily able to do much if we're getting all these fraudulent individuals in office.
Yeah, no, I just don't see any way around it. And I bet they'll not only steal House and Senate, they'll probably steal them with 20 or 30% margin in them. Because that's where they'll focus their effort. And they're going to want to double make sure that even if somehow Trump sneaks in, like he snuck in around them in 2016, they will want to keep his hands tied. So, and that's how they'll do it. And matter of fact, they won't even vote to confirm him as president. So,
Wow.
yeah, no, it's a pretty bad situation. Just want to mention, too, the whole ranked choice voting deal. I believe that's on the ballot now in November. They already had a preliminary vote on it, which got it to the ballot in November. And they could cheat in ranked choice voting into Nevada. And if that's a situation, it ain't ever coming back.
It's a nail. Ranked choice voting is a nail in the coffin of freedom. Get rid of ranked choice voting. Not only does it make the system even more complex, so it's easier for people that understand it, that can manipulate it, but it also forces the computers to be used because it's such a complex way to count votes. And as soon as you force the computer use, you then are locked into using computers. See how creative these psychopaths are?
It's incredible.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So this is why, it all gets back to what this episode is about. What can we as citizens do? And the only thing that we can do is make it as hard as possible for them to jack up their numbers, because we won't give them the advanced information. And then after the election, we gotta, in the court of public opinion, we gotta be on them to just get it out there. Why is it taking an extra day? Why is it, whatever it's going to take for them to make up for those votes? So we need to push on both ends. It's kind of like we're like a car that loses its power steering, and we're going to manually turn the steering wheel here to get through this because it's
and educate.
Built this system. Yeah,
educate people too. We can do that.
Yeah.
If this is 80% an education problem. There's so many people that have been lied to. A lot of Democrats have been lied to. Election officials have been lied to. Secretaries of state have been lied to. Everyone needs to open their eyes and see what's really happening. Everyone deserves that. And we need to unite as Americans, all sides, Democrat and Republican and black and white and gay and straight and Jewish and Christian. I don't care. Everyone needs to unite to restore our freedoms and just ensure that our election system, every aspect of it, is transparent and verifiable by everyone. The rest of the stuff will work out. But focus on getting our election system to work transparently and verifiably, and that is the best start we can have to correcting the wrongs in our country.
Venom, we saw that this past weekend in Stone Mountain, Georgia. We had grassroots Democrats, grassroots Republicans, black and white, people from different backgrounds, and we all realized that we can have policy differences. But until we have to set those aside right now and fix this as Americans, because that, maybe it never was even true, I don't know, but that maybe false choice of R versus D that certainly exists now. I think Bannon said it this morning and some others. It's no longer R versus D. It's we the people versus the globalist corporatist, and that's what we're fighting right now. We the people, we the Americans.
Wow.
100%.
So before we wrap up this episode, could we go over all the steps again? I know I'm having you guys repeat some of this, but for people who showed up a little bit later on in the episode, let's go through all the steps that we need to make sure are taken place in order for us to ensure that the election is not stolen in 2024. Whoever wants to take
I think Mark, Vam, I think Mark
Okay.
is pretty adept at saying, do this to minimize that time and space for fraud. Mark, I'll give it to you.
Well, here's what I would do. In general, I would say vote on election day in person, or as close to election day and as close to in person as you can. Get involved in your elections. If you don't get involved, you're not going to see what's going on. We need people to understand. I've had people that didn't think there was a problem, but they finally got nagged enough that they jumped in and took a look, or they became a poll watcher or a judge. And once they saw what was actually happening, their mind completely flipped and they realized what the problem was. So vote like you've never voted before. Get everyone you know to also vote in person on election day, if at all possible, or as close to election day as possible. And then on the isolated counties or states, because the laws are different and the tactics are different, the manipulation tactics, identify all the ways that things are being manipulated in your state, in your county, and then close as many of those gaps as you can. Get as many eyes on it as possible, close the gaps, and try to do everything you can to minimize the amount of manipulation and increase the amount of real votes. And contact me. I'll help and I'll work with you. I'll give you access to a platform that I've built to help put those resources in a place where you can access them and work with other people that are working towards the same type of strategies in your areas and in areas that are using are having the same problems that you're having in your area. So definitely contact me. I can be reached on handcountroadshow.org is my website. It's handcountroadshow, all one word, .org. And my phone number is 303-990-2660. Again, that's 303-990-2660. I'm on the phone a lot, but text me if you don't get a hold of me by phone, and I will get back to you as fast as I can.
Very cool. Very cool. Here's a flyer that this team put together. I just wanted to show that to you guys. Marty, you had something to say?
Yeah, so basically, the big buzzword, the phrase that we have to overcome is bank the vote. You know, that's the big psyop that they rolled out. And it's amazing. They took the situation in Arizona, and what should have been a very easy show of guilt on their part, they miraculously turned it around and blamed it on us. And then they call it bank the vote and vote early and everything that followed. It's incredible. Wow. So yeah, it's amazing. They get A+ in psychology. As people are 24/7, they come up with stuff. I greatly admire their creativity in a sense. But yeah, if we could put the flyer back up again for a second, I want to go through that. So what we're doing here is instead of bank the vote, what we need to do is flood the vote with people who vote only on election day. So we'll just go through this. We're calling this, it's like smart voting. You know, everything else, we have a smartphone, whatever. This is smart voting. And in order to do that, you need to vote in person only on election day. Or if you can't quite manage it, or health issues, whatever, you can't take the time to wait in line, and you're using a drop box, you will want to, like I described before, like at your local church or other friendly area where you trust them and where it'll be monitored, use that drop box only on the last 3 days, because if it's there for more than 3 days, it's going to be picked up like 4 days before, and it's going to be delivered and then they're going to know how you voted, and they'll be able to use that for seeing how many they need to make up for. So these are like the two things we can do. So instead of bank the vote, just think in terms like this big tidal wave here, flood the vote. And you can see like in the background, there's a lot of people there with flags, and it's like, we got to get the masses out for this. We need everyone, because they're certainly going to get their illegal numbers up. So anyway, and that the votes just need to be tallied on election day. So that's kind of the big thing. It's all we can do as citizens. This is all we got left. Everything else is rigged against us.
Wow.
So we just need the communication tool. We just need the communication tool. And it'd be really nice if the RNC and Turning Point USA were on board with this. There's like 3 levels. It's like the first level, they are doing things that are totally going to lose us the election by promoting early voting and ballot banking. So now if they would just stop that and not push that at all, then we'd at least kind of like be in a no man's land where they're not damaging us. But what we really need is for them to get on board with pushing what we're talking about on here. That's about it. They need to get on board with this. And yes, Lara Trump and Charlie Kirk, please give Mark Cook a call.
Yeah. And so with this video, I pasted the JP video right in the descriptions for people to share. So you got 2 videos here. You got this episode that you could share with your friends. Obviously, you could tell them verbally what to do, because this is not a complex thing. You could sum it up in a couple of sentences as far as how they need to vote in order to ensure that their vote is not stolen. And then we have that very entertaining JP video that you could share with people that pretty much explains the same. So viewers out there, you have all the tools you need to share this information, to do what you should be doing in terms of making sure that we don't have another election stolen due to ignorance, due to institutions misguiding us. So please do share this information. Let all your friends and family know. Try to get it to at least 5-10 people, and then this will spread. And this little podcast here will have a huge effect on the election that's to come. Any other final words, guys?
I'm just checking. Pastor Andy might be able to come on. He's down there at that Turning Point event. I just texted him. They just wrapped up. So maybe we maybe give a minute or so.
What Turning Point event?
Something I'm not sure, but it's with pastors. He was meeting with a number of pastors.
Where at?
In Phoenix.
Oh.
So I'm adding one more link back here for on the descriptions for Mark Cook, handcountroadshow.org. The viewer could find this link in the descriptions underneath the JP video. So just letting you guys know that is there. So Mark, for people to help you with your efforts, that's what the website's for?
Well, yeah, the website is one, to communicate what the Hand Count Roadshow is and what I'm doing, and to explain to the viewers very quickly. I decided the best way to do this, to educate everyone, is to get in and buy an RV, travel county by county, state by state, and bring this information directly to my fellow citizens at their doorstep, in their churches, wherever I can get venues to communicate this with them, and work with them to find out what's going on in their communities and how we can help fortify their elections together. And I'm doing this on my own dollar. I'm not funded by any organizations or any big donors or anything like that. So I literally am running out of my savings account. I want to make sure I'm beholden to the people. I'm doing this for the citizens, and I'm depending on the citizens to keep fuel in my tank and be able to pay for RV parks and keep some food in my belly as I travel. And I'm going to be on the road for at least the next 7 to 8, 9 months, and I'm going to give it everything I can. All my stops are listed on that website as well. If you scroll down, you'll see all the different events I've done, and I try to put the videos for each of the events on there as well. So I'm just not saying I'm doing stuff. I'm doing stuff, and I'm putting it right out there for everyone to watch as I go on my journey. And I'm trying to include a lot of resources there as well. I'm doing everything I can as one person.
And that's exactly right. And what Mark said, a lot of us are doing. I mean, I have invested so much money in trying to, bring awareness to the election integrity issue since, February of 21. Actually, the day after the 2020 election, I started working on how to solve and how to expose and research how they cheated. And, we're here now where we're at because of that, because we got a lot of people involved, and it kind of just brought our coalition together. We had a very historic meeting May 1st, 2021 at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. We had a lot of great people there. Patrick Byrne, Lindell, the Hoff brothers tuned in. Patrick Byrne, of course, Brian Kennedy with Claremont Institute.
Ramo, Doug Mastriano.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And had the 5 charter members of the Secretary of State Coalition. And we made history that day. We started the process to expose exactly what happened in our election, or what happens in our elections. And, we've made a lot of headway since then. I mean, it's amazing how far we've come, and without any money. Just think, well, we've had a little bit of money from Patrick Byrne. God bless him. He did fund us quite a bit. So I got to give him credit for that. But, nobody else stepped up. All of these rich donors that are standing up, wanting to be seen at Charlie Kirk's fundraiser just made me sick. I just, and I've talked to him. I actually called him after that event and explained to him what we're doing, and nothing. Crickets.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's just so disappointing, and it just,
Jim, something you said, and I'm just one of the comments from the audience, Vam, it says, nothing you guys do will change anything, so why waste your time on these topics? It's because the only way they win is if we quit, right? And I go back and say,
well, I disagree with that. What we've done has made a huge difference.
Oh, I agree. And what I was going to say is go back to 1776, right? They didn't quit. It made a difference. Civil rights made a difference, right? They didn't stop. Women's right to vote didn't stop, made a difference. COVID BS, right? We stood up to the face diapers and to the shots, made a difference. This will make a difference if people are energized. Wake up. It's your elections. Take ownership. The Mark Cooks and the Lindells and the Burns and the Jim Marchands, they can't do it all themselves. Americans got to start helping Americans to save our American republic.
Unfortunately,
and we can.
Unfortunately, a lot of people are like this person, whoever this was that said that. And that's unfortunate, because they are the problem, not us.
Seriously, why even waste time on a comment like that? Like, our republic's stolen. We have no more freedom. What? Jump off a bridge? I mean, I don't even.
Well, hey, you know what? I understand people feel desperate. I get that, and I'll tell you what. To whoever that was, I'm still going to fight with everything I've got to try to save this for you.
Right.
Regardless.
Just stay asleep on your couch and, throw stones. You're not in the arena.
Yeah.
Now, you know what? Take a break, but when you're ready to get involved, get involved. Every single person can make a difference. It's incredible how much difference a person can make. And I don't care if you say there's just no way. There absolutely is. You could send one email, have one person watch that JP Sears video, for instance, and that might be the one person that says, you know what, I'm going to do a little campaign here. Every tiny little thing we do makes a difference. So every single person needs to do that.
And I just want to throw in, if 99% of the people out there don't feel that they can make a difference, I'll tell you one way you can. Vote on election day, and you'll make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yep.
We got this.
If we don't get energized like this, and last comment from me is that we are citizens, not subjects, and we have to start acting more like citizens. And I think we are seeing this great awakening is happening in the Latino community, in the Black community, and everyone had that line that was the line too much, right? And the American folks are waking up to this, regardless of what way they register for a party, what the melanin in their skin is, whether they've got none like me or they got a bunch. People are beginning to wake up to this thing. And collectively, when the Americans put our heads together and our hearts and our souls, we win.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And Jim, I feel with you, brother, like in terms of the whole fundraising thing, one of the things I want to mention, and this is not necessarily an accusation against anybody, but one of the issues with our movement or any movement is that there are these institutions that seem to really act as a vacuum for all the fundraising. I saw this, back in the day before I knew any better. I was a Democrat voter. I was definitely against George W. Bush. I fell for what was called MoveOn.org back then because I thought what George W. Bush was doing was really wrong. And MoveOn.org promised a whole bunch of things, like holding these individuals accountable that started, wars on our dime and time and, American soldiers losing their lives, and they were supposed to hold them accountable. And nothing happened. Really, what happened is that they acted as a vacuum for all this fundraising. All the organizers of that group made a whole bunch of money, nonprofit, but they could get paid as much as they desire to be paid. And really what they do is they create a vacuum. And what that does when you give money to these big institutions is that the people that are truly doing the freedom fight, that are spending their own time and dime, like the individuals that are on this podcast, every single person has spent their own time and dime on the fight for freedom. Well, they don't get as much funds, and so they're limited. So the whole paradigm has to change in terms of, we daytize these individuals or these organizations, and all the money goes to them, and then folks that are on this podcast are not getting enough to spread the word. So that's something that I just want to share for us not to continue making those same mistakes going forward.
Agreed.
Yep. I've watched it for 3 years. It's been very painful watching the wrong people, the wrong organizations suck up all the resources when the real soldiers that are fighting on the front lines are barely able to eat. And that's been very painful to watch. I've also known Jim for about 3 years, and he's absolutely an incredible, solid patriot. And I am very proud to be able to work alongside him, try to help when I can, and speak next to him as well. So if you can support Jim, please support Jim. He's the real deal.
Thank you. And right back at you, Mark. You are a major cog in this wheel. Let me tell you, without you, we wouldn't have near the technical expertise that we do. And it's thank you. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
Guys, I appreciate all the incredible work you're doing. Again, for the viewers, please make sure you share this episode. Please make sure you share that JP Spears episode. That's right in the descriptions on the bottom of this video. We also have Mark Cook's website. Please consider donating to him. He's driving around in an RV across the country on his own time and dime, trying to save our future. So that something big has to happen there. People should focus on donating to the individuals on this podcast because they are there getting their hands dirty with this freedom fight. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Blood Money. Make sure you go to americahappens.com, insert your email address so you can stay subscribed to our network. And I will see you all on the next episode of Blood Money. Take care.
The lifestyle network of the 21st century, where we rage against the mainstream media, providing a place for censored people, censored cultures, censored ideas. America Happens is uncensored entertainment with our flagship shows: Blood Money with Them Miller, Where Are the Men? Conspiracy Truths with Mindy Robinson, AHN News Live with Corinne Clifford, Gloves Off with Joey Gilbert, Debate Smackdown, Unfuck Your Mind News, Follow the Money, the America Happens documentary series, Medicine Cabinet, Meet the Frontline Doctors, and many more. On the Blood Money podcast, we expose conspiracy, corruption, and controversy. We tell the stories they won't tell. We speak with the people they don't want you to know. We give the information that's censored everywhere else. You hear from the freedom fighters, the outliers, the frontline doctors, the whistleblowers, the moms and dads, the generals, the artists, the investigative journalists, the legends, the icons, the forward thinkers, the professors, the teachers, the good lawyers, the watchmen and the watchwomen, the activists, the brilliant minds, the musicians, the pastors, the analysts, the patriots, the risk takers, the warriors, the victims, the writers, the lions,